Hey, folks, this is J.E. McCullough. Welcome to your Break It Down show. Pete Turner has done an amazing job breaking it down now 1,000 times. Today's guest is TJ Brady, writer and producer on such incredible shows as The Shy and Shooter. Remember to go to savethebrave.org if you're inclined to donate to a good cause. And with that, I'll turn it over to Pete Turner and Tom Coyle. Congrats again, Pete. I'll be honest, there's not much I've done 1,000 times.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay
This
Moore.
is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
This is TJ Brady, and you're watching The Break It Down Show.
And now, The Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Attempt number 2 to get this done. Last time the Santa Anas, and you know TJ how the Santa Anas are, you got to fold up the backyard, put all the cushions away, because they come blowing through, and so we just didn't have a good enough connection, so I appreciate you rescheduling it. Of course, Tom, always great to have you. You have been so busy. It's also been tough to reliably get us all in the same place at the same time, so I dig it that we get to do this. Tom, tell us why we have TJ Brady on the show today.
Absolutely. Well, very cool treat today. We all love a great story, and TJ is a great story and a great story writer, as you're going to find out about. But TJ and I knew each other at West Point. When I was a plebe, a freshman, TJ was my team leader as a sophomore, and the guy showing me the ropes and making sure I had my head on straight and all that kind of thing. Any success or failure you have in my life, blame TJ or credit TJ.
Hey, man. Hey, the way you turned out, I'm pretty proud. So that's all I can. I think the results speak for themselves. Not that I had that much to do with it, having you memorize what was for breakfast and on the front page of the paper. But
anyway, whatever impact that was, TJ, a guy, obviously graduated West Point, went to the Army, got into a sales gig for a while, and here he is now as a writer. And if you watch shows like Shooter or Narcos, TJ is the guy behind those shows. He's got some a new project, I think, in the works as well. And I've got trying to dabble in this a little bit too. And he's been generous enough to proofread some of the stuff I've sent over. But just that whole thing of, finding what you want to do in life and taking the circuitous path and getting there. I think it's just a story a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, well, it took some time. It was West Point in the Army, and then while I was in the Army, I kind of figured out I wanted to be a writer. Didn't know what kind of writer, and when I left the Army in kind of the first half of 2001, I moved to New York because my family's from upstate New York, and hey, why not be a writer in New York? And I started taking classes at night, and one of those classes was a screenwriting course at Gotham Writers Workshop. And that's when the gong went off and I said, bong, this is it. This is what I want to do. I started reading scripts and just figured I could do this. And a mere 7 years later, I finally got to do it professionally. Thank God for that sales job you talked about, giving me the ability to pay the rent and put me on the road a lot so I could write in hotels, because that's really the most important thing. If you want to be a writer, is just AIC, if I can say ASS in chair, typing. That's the secret to anybody.
You can say ass and chair. That's fine. That's an official term.
Well, the standing desk now is the way a lot of people are doing that. The point taken.
Never heard of it. But a lot of, before I moved from New York to LA in 2004, I think I had 7 feature scripts and like 4 different TV pilots. Now, they were all terrible.
Right.
They were all terrible. But
did you know that at the time?
I thought they were good. But looking back, 16 years later, they weren't terrible. The seeds of being good, they definitely had the spark of passion in them. But it's just reps. It's like anything. You want to, I have a buddy of mine who's a Green Beret, actually, who years later I helped him get his first job writing in Hollywood, and he's fantastic, named Brian Anthony. And he always goes, you want to be better at doing push-ups, do push-ups. You want to do better at doing pull-ups, do pull-ups. You want to be a better writer, just write. And it really is getting it all down and just do those reps, and don't be afraid to kind of suck, and don't be afraid to get feedback, and just you have to listen. I mean, you don't have to take it all, but you have to listen. That's the whole thing. And over time, here and there, I got some positive feedback along the way from other people who were trying to be writers, other professional writers. And then I started placing and winning in some contests, which told me, okay, I'm on the right track. I'm not crazy. I'm not the guy in American Idol singing wildly off key who they're going to play on the gag reel. Like, I can do this. Now I just have to keep at it long enough to get lucky.
This is an important note, and I'm so glad you used singing wildly off key, because I've never really seen American Idol, but when Harry Connick Jr. looks at someone who just sang their heart out and sang wonderfully and said, but you sang off key.
Yeah.
This is the thing with that 16 years ago with your scripts. Yes, there are elements of good in there and great in there maybe, but you have to recognize, like, this is not up to standard, and the only way to do that, again, ass and chair, developing a thick skin for notes, because nobody's first pass at a script, the best scriptwriter in Hollywood can do it, and it's going to be changed and evolved. There's no way around it. And so these other things these unknown unknowns you have to get through are super important. I want you to comment on that again, but I want to ask you, do you know Mark Valley?
I know who he is. I've never met Mark. I know it was kind of an inspiration to see him, blaze the path he did as an actor, and get on some shows and just make a name for himself out here as a West Point grad. I'm proud of him. I don't know him, but I'm proud that he's doing what he's doing.
Just for the audience's sake, Mark at one point was a part of the show. He co-hosted as he tried to learn the whole podcast process. And for those who don't know, he's from upstate New York. He's a West Point grad, and he's an actor, but also like he writes now too as well. So it's neat to see two different guys do that. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on collecting those elements that there are the unknown unknowns? I mean, yes, ass and seat time, but that's also not good enough. You could write 100 bad scripts, right? But how do you collect the connections, the people who say, keep working on this, kid, you got, and then you get to come back, and how do you collect those things at a level and could you have done it any faster than you did it?
Let's see. The easy question, could I have done it any faster? I guess the answer to that is yes, if I had a mentor to point me in the right direction sooner. I mean, for a while, I was just kind of groping in the dark, and it was ugly, and I didn't. The other thing, too, is I think at first I thought, if I know people, they're going to hook me up. The thing is, nobody's going to hook anybody up. I mean, the real deal is for you to be hooked up, for you to get lucky, your material has to be good. Nobody's just going to go, I like you, you're the man, here's a job writing a movie, or here's a job on a TV show. And a lot of writers coming out think, if I just make connections and I do a lot of this and we're all pals, people will hook me up. They can't. I mean, there's just so many levels of, I guess, quality control that it's very difficult. I'm not going to say impossible, but difficult. Because it does happen, and bad stuff does get through the sieve. I wouldn't count on that as a career plan. Number two, how do I collect I advise every single person to take a screenwriting course. You can take them online. UCLA Extension. I did mine at Gotham Writers Workshop, and I had an amazing teacher teach me Screenwriting 101. I should probably reach out to him. It's been 15 years. His name was Jason Greif. He was excellent. He broke it down, very simple, bit by bit, 10 pages a week. Anybody can do 10 pages. And, this is the inciting incident. This is the call to action. This is the refusal to call to all of those Joseph Campbell hero's journey mile markers that we all hit. And yes, it's cliche. You definitely have to learn the form before you can play with it, I think, and really be a master of it. And I'm still not a master of it. When you get a professional opinion and when you get professional feedback, and you'll know if you're on the right track, wrong track. And when that person says to you, this is really good. He said to me, you're really good. You should really keep at this. That meant a lot to me. It meant the world to me. I don't even think he knew. And then I would take more, writing for television. So it's adapting that process for the 1 hour drama. And so take a class. There are so many universities offer them online. When this COVID thing is over, hopefully you can take it in person, because it's great to meet your classmates after and just talk writing and give feedback. And then when I moved to LA, a friend of mine said, oh, there's a screenwriting group that meets on Saturdays in a coffee shop. And we met at 8 a.m. on Saturdays. But that was all I had. And so that group, everybody would submit something every week and we would give feedback and go around. And it just, again, it's doing the reps in the chair to produce the pages. And then it's giving and taking feedback. Reading other people is key, because sometimes you read something, whether it's a professional script or not, that just blows you away and you go, whoa, I really see it now. Like, you could have explained it all day and I wouldn't have understood it until I saw it myself. And so that's key. Watch a lot of movies, watch a lot of great TV shows, and read scripts for both of them. And one thing I tell a lot of people who want to do this, try and get a copy of a script. The internet is amazing. You can get them. And watch the episode with the script open and see how the words on that page and the action descriptions and the scene descriptions on that page are reflected on the screen. And that will teach you so much. So many people think they need to describe the room and what color the pillows are and what color the curtains are and the way the wind is blowing.
Not your job.
Yeah, not your job. And when you see what is actually in a good professional script and what is on the screen, it just clears a lot of the clutter out of your mind, and you'll be able to get to the heart of what you need to be doing a lot quicker.
Now, TJ, I had a question. Like, in terms of,
Yeah.
I've sort of gone down this journey a little bit. You hear people say, "Oh, start with a treatment, or write a script, or write a script." So, like, in terms of, you could mind going down a little bit, the different sort of mediums people can do in terms of starting out and shopping around ideas and the pros and cons of the different types of mediums.
So for movies, a lot, you can get a lot of, and they don't make very many original movies anymore. So this is a big caveat. When I was starting out, if you had a good log line for a movie, it's kind of like character, setting, and what they have to overcome. You know, if you had some amazing thing like that, you could get a meeting off of it, but then you would have to go through in detail how you plan to execute that. It doesn't hurt to sit down and write a prose treatment of your movie idea of beginning, middle, and end. This is the character. This is where you find them. This is what's going on in their life. And then all of a sudden, you know, the meteor lands and they're given some gift with a message, and now they're off on their quest, you know, and this is what they encounter along the way. And then in the middle, they think they've achieved it when, oh no, there's a big, huge midpoint reversal, you know, to use some jargon. And now they realize that what they really need to be doing is go back to where they started. And then it's the journey back. And then it looks like they're all going to die at the end, and they somehow pull it out, and you'll have to describe all this, and end of movie. And here's what the character accomplished. But more importantly, here's how they changed emotionally, their emotional arc from the beginning to the end of the film. TV is not altogether that different, except in TV, you do not want to be able to have a resolution in 90 minutes to 2 hours. You need a story engine. So it's either solve a case every week, heal a patient every week, win a court case every week, something like that, or a long ongoing story that is interesting enough, kind of like Breaking Bad, my favorite show of all time, to where there's a character with a problem and each attempt to solve it just leads to more problems.
Yeah.
To the tune of 100 episodes, you know? And so that's the basic difference. I mean, both of them typically start with character and then what they're up against, and it really helps to have an interesting context or setting to place them in. It's a lot more complicated, but that's what I would say to people at the beginning. And if you can't sit down and write out a one-page summary, it's probably not a great idea. If you can't then write out expanded, 5 to 10 page summary, probably not a great idea. Like if you just run out of things to say, or it doesn't seem to gel, you're going to have a much harder time, believe me, translating it into script form and onto screen form. More importantly, I always say in the writer's room, the audience doesn't get a package in the mail of the script and then read it. They could give a crap. They need to see it on the screen. That's what's important.
Actually, growing up, one of the ways we learned how to read was we would get like ABC scripts ahead of times. So we would watch Happy Days and we'd already read the script, but only in that one case. But it was a great way though to teach us to read and to learn a little bit about screenwriting and everything.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was super neat, and it stuck in my head. And none of my friends remember this. And I'm like, yeah, we had Happy Days, we had Laverne, and all these shows that we got to do. I'm putting a link for a great book. A friend of the show, a dear friend of the show, is a guy named Jeff Calhoun, and he's got his book there. If you start with that book, you will have a great foundation. He breaks the process down really well. But there's so many of these books. But Jeff is a great friend, and I own his book. And normally it's right here by me at my desk because, in general, with any kind of story, TJ, you know this. Like if you have these elements, you have a good story. Tony Toast. He used to write for Longmire, and he knows that world so well because he grew up in it that he basically took over the show. They're like, "Oh, you have all the ideas. You know what this looks like." But he said, if you write a script and someone says, "This is one of the best scripts I've read all year," that's not good enough. Like,
nope.
It's not like they've got to be like switched on. Like, oh my God, we have to get this made. And that's that next gear. How many? Oh, go ahead, please. I see you about to say something.
I was going to say you could die of praise. Like there's some expression that's you could get drunk off of like useless praise in Hollywood. Somebody knows that phrase. I don't know it, but it's true. Somebody goes, "This is really good." Blah blah. When it is where it needs to be when they are asking you if they can option it or if they can buy it or if they can take it to somebody. Yeah, exactly. You nailed it.
Now, how have streaming services and HBO is doing their own streaming now, Netflix, of course. Do you see it as something that's making things increasing options for writers, particularly on the original content piece, or how do you see that shaping the screenwriting world?
There's a lot more jobs in television because of it, so for that I'm thankful. And a lot more opportunities, yes. And so even for movies now, I mean, so many movies now are going direct to Netflix. Wonder Woman is coming out on HBO Max on the same day.
Right.
So I think it's going to be a good thing overall. It's still hard to get to them. Mm-hmm. And the bar really isn't much lower. It's not like, oh, there's so many now. I can give something mediocre. It's just, they're all big companies. They're all, traded on the stock market. They're all very business focused, and they're betting on either established intellectual property. A lot of times, one of my projects is that I have working right now, or they're betting on a writer / showrunner with a great track record of cranking out hits, like Benioff and Weiss of Game of Thrones, or Sean Ryan, king of police dramas. He did The Shield, and he's done Chicago Code and SWAT. So. They're looking for those bankable, in as much as this industry can have a bankable thing. I mean, I don't know what they do, but in my theory, they're like, it's something they can put into a spreadsheet, some sort of past performance that will, seemingly give them a buffer if it fails, that they can show their boss. Well, look, he was so successful at this other thing. It was a good bet to make. So it's still not easy, but there are more opportunities, which is good.
This is a great point because here's what we've learned, on the show about screenwriting and all these elements. We just had Jeffrey Reddick on the show the other day. He's been on a couple of times, and he gets to make his own project every so often. But they come to him with offers like, "Hey, can you work on this? Can you fix this?" or whatever, or "Can you give us the next Final Destination?" And he's like, "Yeah, here it is right here." And they're like, "No, we don't want that. We want, because." Because it came out of nowhere, right? And then they're like, damn, 5 movies plus will continue to make these, for the next 20 years because there is a market for them. And also, I was talking to him, and we realized that direct-to-video is no longer like crappy movie. It's like a viable, if not the viable way to create things. The amount of ideas you have to have, or the confidence in your ability to come up with ideas. You have one good script, oh, you're precious. We all like you. It's way to go. You have to have 25 ideas. I mean, that's what everybody's telling me is like you just have to be an idea machine and be able to execute in a lot of different formats and forms. And you may only get to play in one, but you have to be just a fountain of ideas.
Absolutely. You have to have, you kind of have to have all of these keys so that when you get to a door, one of them might open it. The lucky door. When my writing partner and I first we were trying to get an agent, and he read one of ours and goes, "Okay, that's good. Do you have anything else?" And thank God we did. Like he wanted to see that we weren't some one-shot deal. and that we worked on one script for 6 years just to get it in decent shape. I mean, we had 2 other things to send him, and he said, okay, good. We read them, we got signed, and luckily that began a career. So, but if you just have one script and one idea, I mean, I would tell a new writer to wait before jumping into the pool until you have a few. I just met with some writers last week, actually, and told them the same thing. They really, really, have this great idea and the script, and it's working, and it is cool. It's a great idea, but it's, short of you hitting a grand slam your first time up to bat, you're going to need the second idea, the third idea, the fourth idea. I remember my first big, great idea. It's still on a hard drive somewhere and never been produced. So I'm glad I didn't stop there, because that was the one.
Now, TJ, one thing you've done, for example, you did Shooter. So what's that process like when you get something that, there's already been a book, there's already been a movie version of that show, and now you're trying to take something where there's a certain framework, I guess, that's probably expected, but at the same time, you're trying to bring your own slice into the whole thing.
Yeah, that project, we came aboard after, so the guy who did the adaptation, it was named John Lavin, amazing writer, great boss, loved working for him. He did an adaptation of the movie and kind of compressed the first act of the movie, the shooting, the assassination, into a pilot. And we got to know the character really well, and the framing of this character, Bob Lee Swagger. They said, come and tell us how to prevent a sniper from shooting the president. So he's there casing everything and looking at all the angles and keeping a journal on it. And then somebody shoots the president. And of course, he's there on all the security cam footage, scoping it out. And when they raid his house, they find all the diagrams, and it looks like he did it. And that was just the pilot episode, So he did an amazing job. And when we all got together to start breaking episodes 2 through 13 or 2 through 10, it was like, how do we take that and twist it and turn it into 10 hours instead of, 90 more minutes? And that really, it was a great writer's room, and sitting around with seasoned veterans of dramas and action dramas like this, where you start which avenues can we go down that are red herrings, but red herrings that will take us to another avenue to go down that is also a red herring. So it's not a complete waste of time. And so it starts with knowing who set him up and why, and then you backward plan it. Something you might be familiar with from the military days, Tom, backward planning. Start from the objective and work backward. And that's what we did. And you sort of go backwards, like, okay, this guy is who set him up, and here's the reason why. And once you know that, and you just start working backward to how you can get to him, or you'll put up on a big, huge whiteboard or a big bulletin board, Bob Lee Swagger does this, and then at the end, this is who set him up and why, and just possible, I guess, mile markers or tent poles to get to that person. And then you spend like between 2 and 3 episodes with each tent pole. And it's a good little thing, like, oh, we need to go to Mexico because in Mexico there was this bank account number that they had originally paid me out of. And when you go down there and you find the person who opened that account, oh, they get ambushed and thrown in a Mexican prison. And now we have to escape from the Mexican prison. It just little things like that. It's backward planning, brainstorming, and it takes time. You spend 2 to 3 weeks just figuring out that season-long architecture before you start breaking episode 2, typically. Because you have to, if you don't know the whole architecture, breaking episode 2 could be a real cluster.
When you build that season-long arc, though, are there certain things that are already there, like of these 13 episodes, of these 26 episodes, we've got a Christmas episode, we've got a Thanksgiving, all that stuff. So are you really playing with less numbers and you're not trying to get that done during Christmas? Or how does that work? How do you account for the things that you have to do seasonally?
Yeah, I mean, Shooter was a show we didn't need a Christmas episode and a Mother's Day episode and all that, because it was just like one tight story. Now on all the crime, like on Lie to Me, I think we did a Christmas episode, because I would solve a crime every week when I did that. Let's see. Also, by the way, Shooter, there was a book and there was a movie. And so we could take the book and the movie and kind of take it apart for parts that worked. Oh, I really liked in the movie when they did that. So the thing where they took them and they tried to make them commit suicide, like, boom, let's make an episode out of that. Or, the one where they went to the movie, they went to his old spotter's wife or girlfriend. And in this one, Bob Lee Swagger was married. So we had him go to his old spotter's mother, and there's an episode, and so the source material in those, I mean, the beauty in adapting source material is you can use what you want and just throw out the rest. And we were lucky that both the book and the movie had a lot of cool stuff. So those in a situation like that take the place of the Christmas episode and the Valentine's Day episode. But yeah, it's and like going back to Narcos was full of real world stuff that happened. And on Narcos, we had the real Murphy and Pena come sit in the writer's room and just tell stories. And those guys, I mean, I couldn't believe what they were telling us. I mean, couldn't believe it. And so when you have that rich history to work from, it helps. I know some of the stuff Tom was working on had some really rich history as well. And it's just like, pull all of that out there. All the good stuff, man. The boring stuff, skip over it.
How much room is there for art? I mean, for the sake of art. I mean, yes, we know that certain formulas work. Like at one point, fairly recent in the last 10 years, there must have been 12 different Sherlock Holmes. And I don't just mean things called Sherlock Holmes. I mean, like, Monk is Sherlock Holmes. There's so many of these things, but there's so many of them because, look, elementary.
It works.
It works. So how much room is there for something just like, what? We're going to do this for the sake of the art side of things?
I mean, it really depends on the network. There's some really beautiful stuff, like emotional, heartfelt stuff. Like NBC has This Is Us. That show can make you cry. That show can. Yeah. There's entertainment, there's art, and then there's this whole spectrum in between that most shows fall somewhere on that spectrum. I mean, nobody's watching. People watch Law and Order because it's a fun puzzle to put together. People watch crime drama, like they watch Lie to Me because it was like you learn something about how to tell if somebody's lying, and you get to put together the puzzle of who did it, and how. And so people watch for different reasons. I think HBO is doing a lot of really cool artistic stuff. Showtime, a lot of the streamers, but again, it's not just limited to them. Because there are shows that can put a lump in your throat on network too. It's really, I don't know. I mean, and it's so subjective for me to say, oh, this is art and this is not. I don't feel qualified. I think it's like they hire you to do a job, or they'll pay you to do a job, and you do it to the best of your ability and let the world figure out what it is. I think is probably the safest way because I know. There have been times where I've been tempted into taking myself too seriously, and the world slaps me down pretty hard. So,
hey, can you go more into Narcos? How you got in that gig? Because I think it's probably one of the most famous TV shows that's been in shows on Netflix, or actually just anywhere for the last few years. And I think that'd be a cool story. Well, I think I'm fast with the story.
Yeah, that was a fun one. It was after season 1, and they got a new showrunner, and I just happened. This is a lucky thing. I guess I was in the game to be lucky. My writing partner and I had helped the showrunner of the guy they hired, work on a different pilot he was trying to do. He was trying to do an adaptation of The Bourne Identity and one of those incarnations, and we helped him because of a recommendation of another writer we knew, and he said, oh, these guys would be good to help you with that. And that little process, he liked us, and we became friends with him. And when he came on Narcos, he said, oh, this is a great fit. Why don't you guys come along? So that was part luck and part doing the work to allow myself to be lucky. And it was awesome. I mean, we came on And a lot of it at first was read the books and watch the documentaries and meet Murphy and Pena and just chew their ears off and get stories for days, and then get together and write it up. And try and divide this amazing period of time. The season I worked on, he broke out of prison, and by the end, Pablo Escobar broke out of prison, and we need to cover the year and a half he was on the run before they killed him. So break that up into 10 episodes. What cool happened in that 18 months that we could dramatize. And even though you were talking about the art of it, Pete, nobody knows exactly what they said. So there's a lot of artistry to be had in dialogue. And then there's an artistry to be had kind of hand in hand between the writers and the director, and how you deal these cards, where everybody who knows the story knows what happened. But how are we going to deal the cards in a way that's both entertaining and surprising, even though you know what happened? How are we going to make that cool? And that's where a lot of the artistry can come in.
The Crown is just out now, and if you haven't already finished the 10 hours of it, look out. But that's one where they have elements of 100% truth, stories, quotes. I mean, because this stuff's happened in a lot of our lifetimes. Like in this season, and this doesn't spoil anything for anybody because it already happened. Prince Charles, and they're talking about him and Diana's love and their marriage, and he's like, "What's love?" Like whatever you define, and you're just like, "Oh my God!" And it's just such a tense moment because you have these people, and they're this fairy tale couple, and this guy's not even sure if what love even means, or it's like, oh my God. But then other times you're like, did they actually say this horrible thing to each other? Did this? And so as a bit of a mechanic, I'm watching this and I'm just like, did I have to know if that really happened, or do you just feed off of that aspect of what this family? And I'm not saying anything bad about anybody in the show. I'm just saying. Right. How you create these moments, it's an incredible. It makes you think outside of the script and outside of the thing that's being presented, and you're just like, I got to look on Wikipedia or whatever and go read about this. I mean, that must be the ultimate compliment for someone like you.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here, and if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it. I got to look on, Wikipedia or whatever and go read about this. I mean, that must be the ultimate compliment for someone like you.
Yeah, I mean, when people, and again, I was part of a very talented team who worked on all these shows. I mean, I wasn't in charge of any of them, and I was just pleased to be kind of playing in this band, that it is a compliment. That it always is nice when people watch something that you worked on, because it's why we do this. You're trying to reach other people and make them feel something, and make that 1 hour of their day a little bit better and enjoyable if you can. Yeah.
Now, what do you do like in a situation for like Narcos, where it's like, you're covering a period of time where there's going to be gaps of what's known, and you have the dual role of trying to represent something that historically happened while at the same time making it interesting. And then how do you sort of strike that balance where people would say, oh, are you being accurate and having, those ramifications there with that?
I mean, it's really determined by the showrunner or the boss. There's going to be a line where fact and fiction get blurred, and it's just where that line is set. I mean, big, huge tentpole events that everybody knows about, you probably shouldn't play with. Mm-hmm. Smaller moments between people, I think, are very free game. Like, you don't know what Pablo said to one of his trusted lieutenants before he shot that guy in the back of the head. I think you strive as much as you can to be accurate, and where accuracy is either just completely unknown, or where the truth is completely unknown, mm-hmm. you have to fictionalize. And in fictionalizing, you're trying to make it exciting. And not sadly, the truth of it is you have to accept that more often than not, exciting fiction is going to beat boring fact every time. It's just going to be a better viewing experience. And the larger truth about it that you're trying to tell will hopefully outweigh whatever small fibs you told along the way to get there.
No, I get that. Well, actually, one of my favorite movies is Oliver Stone's JFK. Now, I think it's all full of shit, but I mean, I love the movie from a movie standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's a great example. And if nothing else, it's like Pete said, if it makes you get on and research what really happened, all the better.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they have that little disclaimer at the beginning. So, based on, inspired by actual events, blah, 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 blah.
Sure.
Don't hold us.
Some of the stuff that's most interesting to me is the collaboration that has to happen. And, unless you're running the show as a showrunner, you don't get to pick who's working with you in that writer's room. And you also have picked someone to write with. So talk specifically about that partnership and what you each bring to the table that the other doesn't help you to do the same damn job, right? Maybe you can overlap, but it works because you inspire each other and you also bring things the other one doesn't bring. And then what is that like in the writer's room in general, where, your idea, you talk about a murder board, go bring a shitty half-baked idea into a writer. It doesn't happen very often, but people do get torn apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my writing partner's name is Rashid Newson. I've been working with him since around 2006, 2007. I met him in that coffee shop writers group, met at 8 a.m. It was discovered on Craigslist. And I was writing features. He was writing features at the time. And he said, I have a short film if anybody has a camera, or if anybody wants to film something. I said, well, I have a decent camera. And it was for the time. Why don't we make a short? And he sent me the script. And I guess I had balls. I don't know. I started rewriting and working it, and I sent it back. And at first he was pissed. And then he goes, oh, actually, this is a little bit pretty good, thank you. And we batted it back and forth and had a little short film that we made and entered into festivals. And, nobody cares about those things, but it was a good experience. We were still both writing features. And my wife said, you watch the same TV shows, you work together. There's a lot more jobs in TV. Why don't you team up for TV? And we got along so well on the short, we said, sure. And we gave it a shot. We wrote some pilots and some spec scripts of Mad Men and Friday Night Lights and, other things. And a bunch of stuff happened. Lucky things happened that wound up us getting our first job. But what I realized at the time, so when you're in a partnership, you split one salary, which is kind of crappy if you're the writer, but it's great for showrunners looking for more brains in their writer's room. And so I think that helped. I have a military background, which is still pretty rare out here. My writing partner is a gay black man, so he brings a really interesting perspective. And so those three things together make us a fit for a lot of shows. We've worked on Shooter and Narcos. We've also worked on The Shy on Showtime, and Army Wives and The 100. We have a really interesting resume because of our diverse backgrounds and what we bring to the table. And I think we're both very good at what we do. We both could be really good standalone writers in any writer's room, but I think we're a good value for the money. And also we work very quickly. There are two of us. We can come up with ideas very quickly, kind of pressure test those ideas and write them up and get them on paper twice as fast as anybody else. When it comes to our own personal strengths and weaknesses, my writing partner is like a story generating machine. That guy, you could give him the silliest premise and he can crank stories out of it. It's like watching a freestyle rapper just come up, watch, somebody throwing him words and just cranking stuff. This is freestyle rapper, people throw words at and you can just incorporate it in a rap. That's my writing partner. Just with good stories that would work on any show. I think my strengths, I'm good at that. I'm not as good. My strengths lie in kind of I think when we get to script level, dialogue polishing, really good. And then in through prep, because you prep and produce the episode, and I have a real love for that, and kind of adapting the set or the location and the actor we cast to what's on the page and making changes on the fly that are going to make it still work. So,
yeah, that's great, man. I appreciate
That's
it.
fascinating.
Yeah, that collaboration stuff, because you have to be able to collaborate in this business, whether it's a writing partner or just in that room. And then one of the things, I know you have a story like this, and then I swear I'm going to let Tom ask a couple questions, but you're going to get that that look from the executive producer who says, "It's a great idea, TJ. We'll need, go ahead and write that. Give it to me tomorrow." And you're like, "It's 50 pages of dialogue." It's like, but you all get that moment where it's beyond your capability, at least mentally. And then, in the military, we get that, right? They send you to a school and they're like, "All right, you're in charge of this class now, TJ. You now have 20 hours of work and 2 hours to do it. Let's see how you get it done." They all do that. So did you have a moment like that in Hollywood?
West Point prepared me well for that. The Army prepared me well for that. And I've realized all you can do is the best you can do.
Right.
And a lot of people waste time freaking out about how good it's not going to be, or how much better it could be if I had that. It's a useless thing. Like, all you have is your task and the time allotted in front of you. So just get to working. And I found if you stop worrying about that and just sit down and type. I mean, when I've had the, 50 pages are due tomorrow or whatever, I kiss my wife and kids, put them to bed. I pour a tall scotch and I sit and I type, and that's it. And it comes out, and I don't really give a shit how good it is or not, because I have to generate it first, and I'll worry about making it better with whatever time I have left. The task given to me was do these 50 pages. And so you're not going to get any points or make anyone happy or probably be around if you come in and go, "Well, I only have 15 pages, but they're good." That was not what was asked of you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's happened 2 or 3 times. It hasn't happened in a while, thankfully. As I've gotten more senior and been number 2s on shows, like, we can sort of help coach and plan ahead and build time in so that doesn't happen. But it's happened 3 or 4 times in my career where, yeah, I mean, that's it. And you just break down who's doing what, pour the scotch, and start typing. And again, and what I'll do in the morning is send whatever I have to my partner. He'll send whatever he has to me. We go through it and make changes, fix the dumb, easy, stupid mistakes. And that's it. Go. Like, if it was due at 9 a.m, we're hitting send at 8:55. You don't want. I hate lateness. I hate excuses. I hate all of that. So I think, and the other thing is, guess what? Person who's worried about it not being good, they know it's not going to be great. Like, only an idiot would think they're going to get Shakespeare in an 8-hour turnaround time. And if they do, that's not like. Then there's nothing you can do anyway.
Right.
So, yeah, not carp about it, not whine about it. Just do it is the only advice I have. Scotch helps too. Bourbon or scotch, depending on the mood, depending on what.
That's great advice for just about anything. I tell you, when I was doing invention and leadership, you can freak people out. Like, you can sit. I mean, you just say time, and it's like, I want you to write a paragraph. And you only have 2 hours to get it done. And go, "Oh my God, I only got 2 hours. I got 2 hours." Like, dude, it's 2 hours to write a paragraph. But as soon as you throw that time constraint, people always freak out. And just do it.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah. It's not. I don't have the most original advice, but I have advice that I've seen work.
You have a dream job. People want to be you. And you wanted to be you, and here you are doing it.
Did.
What is not great about that job? What are you like, man, it's good, but you have to understand, and then fill in the blank?
The uncertainty and instability of it. I have gone 9 months without earning a cent. I've had, times where I thought, "Oh my God, if I don't get this job or sell this thing, I don't know what I'm going to do." Now, in that sense, there are a lot of jobs out there like that. I'm not unique in that. As we've seen with the pandemic, that has expanded to the larger world. But by design, the job, is not stable. I've been on shows where I thought I did great, and they said, "Oh, great, we're going in a new direction next year, so everyone's fired." And you're like, "Oh, okay." Like, you didn't, I've had jobs where I just didn't get along with the boss. So guess what? I'm not there the next year. I've had jobs where I love Shooter. Great example. I loved Shooter. I loved working on that job. I loved everybody I work with. I love my boss. And then the network canceled the show. and I was on that every single episode for 3 years. And they said, sorry, we just don't feel like it anymore. And that sucked. And so that's the crappy part about it. One crappy part. Another corollary to that is you've never made it. Okay. Like every year, my writing partner and I, we've worked, I think, for, 12 or 13 years professionally, been on a bunch of shows, have, 20-something, high 20-something produced episodes, which, 28 hours or whatever of produced TV. Every single year, we have to write something new to show around town to get meetings, because a new sample, a new reason for executives and showrunners to meet us. If I'm just writing the sample that I wrote to get on, Shooter, executives go, I already read that. They have anything else? No, F it, not meeting with them. I mean, so I don't know when people are like, oh, you made it. I don't know what that is. It is a constant, it's like treading water, or swimming. If I stop moving, I will drown. So those two things kind of suck. And then the rest of any negative thing I would ever have to say about it would be completely personality dependent. I don't want to throw people under the bus, so I won't mention names, but there have been individuals I work for who are very petty or very, just assholes. Like, and in any toxic work environment, that can suck. And there's no recourse. I mean, it's just like, for some reason, a lot of behavior like that can be romanticized out here in Hollywood. And I think there are some people who are better performance artists at performing the tortured writer. They're a lot better than they are at being writers or bosses. And that can create a toxic stew where you have very long hours. Those hours are wasted, and you can be demeaned or kind of crapped on. And again, it's happened very rarely, but it has happened. So all in all, I love this job. I feel like I won the lottery every day that I get to do it. Even with all the ups and downs, all I can do is keep writing and keep trying and hope that somebody's going to like the next thing, that whatever we're working on next, that's, but it never stops. It never, ever, ever stops.
What kind of thing would you do if, like, say I'm the network president, I'm the movie, get whatever you want to call me, and I'm like, TJ, I'm going to greenlight whatever you throw at me. What's the thing you would do? Like, there's nothing about, profit, audience, any kind of thing like that left your own devices. What's the thing you would do that you haven't done yet?
I mean, it is a pitch we took out in May, and people said no to it. The pandemic was hitting, and it just was an original idea, wasn't the right time, and it was kind of a modern day Western, but the setting was this little anarchist community out in the desert called Slab City. I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but it's kind of, they have this little anarchist live and let live community out there. And my writing partner and I have spent some time out there and getting to know it and the feel of it and this delicate ecosystem that they've set up to survive in the harshest conditions on Earth. And then, we wanted to upend that with a stranger comes to town story. Yeah. And so that's the thing. Slab City is a thing. I mean, I don't want to get too much into it.
Of course, yeah.
But that's the one. That one hurt. Like when they said no to that hurt. But, you can cry for 15 minutes and then it's move on to the next thing.
Right. Start calling for the next meeting. We have a new one.
Well, no, I mean, we lucked out because some seeds we planted a long time ago with a HBO pilot, HBO bought, but it never went to series. Back in 2015, we had a director attached to that and loved working with them. And we got down the road and they ultimately didn't pick it up. But he and his production company called shortly after that and said, I have a line on a new thing. Sony wants to adapt the feature Finding Forrester for television. Are you guys interested? And we said, sure. And then we started developing that and sold it a few months later, a pilot job. So we're writing that pilot now and fingers crossed. A modern adaptation of Finding Forrester, but for TV.
I want to take a moment and talk a little bit about that uncertainty that you mentioned. Like, and this is not in any way rare. I mean, Well, first off, and I want to get your thoughts on this too, please. But every 6 to 8 months, except for pandemic, caveat applying here, you'll read a story in the LA Times where like this writer works on Shooter or whatever it is, Chicago Hope. and they're homeless because they cannot afford to even buy a house. Like, and this happens all the time. People on big time shows on, they're in the writer's room, and it's so hard to make it. And then at the tip of this, the very top, is someone like Krista Vernoff. She's been on the show, and you reach a transitional point, and you have to either reestablish yourself. And granted, it's easier for Krista, but she had the door slammed in her face. I'm being a little bit dramatic there, but no, canceled, no, until Shonda Rhimes is like, you know what, I could use a break. You can, but not everybody knows Shonda Rhimes and can take over a show, like that. But there is that uncertainty. It's all the time. And if you let someone down, heaven forbid, I mean, that's really bad as well. If you say yes and can't deliver, or if you say no to someone's project, you're almost obliged to say yes for fear of being a person that says no.
You say no to an idea that you have no, like, if you don't have 1 ounce of passion for it, then say no. You're doing them a favor.
Right.
But that's easier said than done if you need a buck.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, Krista, she earned what she had. I mean, she was in the ring for many, many years, taking jabs to the face.
Yeah. And she absolutely has earned it.
Got to know Shonda Rhimes, and Shonda got to know her just from being in there and delivering.
But it happens to everybody where it's like you have this long stretch of no's, and the uncertainty. Sure, she can withstand a year or 2 or 3 or 5 of uncertainty probably, but it doesn't make it any more comfortable,
No. That's the one thing I wish I was better at dealing with, was the sort of worry and stress about the next thing. I wish I could be very zen about it. I'm working on it.
And what are your thoughts on writers getting paid? I mean, I hear, you must hear these stories. You must have peers that are like, I live in a van, or I'm about to live in a van. It's hard to make a living at the bottom as you're breaking in.
Very hard. The base pay for a staff writer is very low, very, very low. The first 2 rungs on the ladder, that's like a union scale. Staff writer, or story editor, executive story editor. Those are all lower level writers, and you're getting paid a weekly check, and it's not that big. You have to really want to do it. I mean, that's all I can say. I mean, I was splitting that, and I'm very lucky. I had a wife who has a good, stable job. I'm very lucky. I don't know what to tell people who are living on a razor's edge. I really don't. It's scary. Very scary, and maybe there are other ways they could, build income or start a podcast about being a low-level writer. I don't know. But the one thing I do, someone said this to me when I was starting out, and I was like, oh, geez, I'm going to be splitting the salary. They said, look, no one's putting a gun to your head to do this, and nobody is owed a career in Hollywood. So if you want it, these are the dues, And so it sort of woke me up. I was like, you're right. Like, what am I going to do? Say no and forego the career that I've had thus far? Because for those 2 years I was sucking it down. Like, I don't know. But it is scary. I do relate to that.
Well, this goes back to that ash and chair thing, too. If you want this job, you better watch out, because motherfuckers are willing to kill themselves to get it. Like, they will. If it involves passion and you're not 100% in on it, you're going to get killed. You can't survive.
There's always somebody who would take your job. 100 people would take your job for half of what you were getting. They don't care. They just want to break in. They're hungry. It's like, it's like if somebody was a pro fighter, the second you start effing off and not training and eating cupcakes, one of these people is going to kick your ass.
That's what happened to that fighter, Rocky Balboa. There's that guy. I can't remember his name. God,
he was out of Chicago. He won a tough man competition.
Yeah, he was Clubber Lang. He was real hungry. Knock you into tomorrow. That was his quote. I'm gonna knock you into tomorrow. And fortunately, Rocky Balboa made a big comeback. I don't know any real boxers stuff to use fictional.
Exactly, no, but I mean, it's an apt metaphor for this. I mean, the second somebody who wants it more, I mean, they're not going to hurt you physically, but you will be hurt mentally and financially, because they will take your spot.
We had Sly Stone on the show early on the show. And he said, if my music's not good enough, I don't deserve to eat. That is what you compete with in show business.
100%.
Yeah. Well, what was really neat, just kind of shifting to a guy who's made it type of thing. So he brought up, I got to hear Sly Stallone speak at an event. And one of the things he said is like, all of his buddies wanted to be action, like they were getting too old to be action heroes. And so they went in there and like they weren't getting cast. They had to write their own movie, which of course became the Expendables. Like, and they couldn't. They financed it themselves because no one was going to, like, you guys action heroes. Yeah, that's not going to work. It was then the second one. Hey, we want to do it. Like, now we're going to fund it ourselves again. But they were able to do that themselves. But it was like, but that's what they had to do because like no one wanted to give them. It just sort of different. Even though they made it, no one's like, yeah, Sly, you action guy. That's not going to work. Oh, you're bringing your buddies from the '80s again? Yeah, that's not going to work. We're not going to fund that.
Yeah, I mean, believing in yourself, there's a very fine line between, good confidence and crazy. I mean, I don't know where it is, and it gets very blurry for me sometimes. I mean, there was a time back when I was trying to break in, I had seriously considered trying to fund and make my own movie so I could get something out there. Now, I'm lucky I didn't have to do it. What I've learned in hindsight is find a director who can direct. If you want to be a writer and you've written a good movie, if you've never directed, find somebody who is an expert at that craft and either make them a partner or pay, I don't know, but get somebody who knows what they're doing if you're going to put money into it.
Exactly. That is such good advice. Yeah. And then if you think you're ready, how come you don't know 10 of those people already? Like you need to have all these pieces in place. Some people can get lucky and not need all that stuff. Like Tony Toast, he went out and got a PhD in poetry, so he knew story at a doctoral level. And so, yes, his first script landed and he got a gig, but he also got introduced by someone else who was equally prepared and equally successful. So you have to know somebody. You have to know more than enough somebodies. And I'm so glad you talked about entering contests. It's like the one discipline. You can't go win a talent show and get signed to a record label anymore. But in the screenwriting, script writing world, if you're not entering contests until you're like get it, because the people who make movies are ones sitting on the board, and you're getting a chance. You want to pitch someone, enter a contest.
Also, a lot of agents and managers will look at the people who placed and won those contests and call you up and meet with you and sign. The Austin Film Festival. Great screenwriting contest, very legit. The Nickel Fellowship in Screenwriting, the #1 amazing screenwriting those two alone. If you enter that and aren't getting like into the second round or whatever, it's just, that is a sign. I mean, Nickel Fellowship, I think, has like 6,000 or 7,000 entrants in it. So if you are placing in like the semifinal, then holy shit, you're doing really well. Keep at it. And maybe an agent or manager will hit you up. Austin Film Festival, they do a thing where they cut the scripts in half, like in the top half makes it to the second round. So you go, oh, okay, out of 5,000 scripts, I'm in the top half. You get feedback. And you can even pay for written feedback, I think, from these things too. The Blacklist, theblacklist.com, you can enter and get feedback. And if they think it's good, and it's all good, do these things. For TV writing, there are the Warner Brothers Writing Fellowship, NBC Writers on the Verge, the CBS Writers Initiative, ABC Disney Writing Fellowship, all these things. I mean, enter, right? Look at the rules and enter. And if somebody's not going to do that, I don't know what to tell them.
Now, what about the path of, and I've seen people who've had their thing turn out this way, where you've written a book, maybe you're thinking like, you know what, I'm good at writing, I think I'm going to write a decent book, and then maybe your goal is to then get that optioned into something, but at least you've created the intellectual property that behind whatever gets turned into. Is that something that's a viable route?
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably, I mean, if you can find a publisher, or if you self-publish and show some numbers, that'll get you a meeting in a heartbeat. I mean, I highly recommend that. Highly. And it might be easier for some people to do. So the important thing is people who want to write just have to be writing. Book, screenplay, poem, essay, magazine article.
Yeah, I wrote this thing. Everyone in Hollywood laughed at me. I had this idea about this guy who was a narcissistic president who would throw out fake news and run things by Twitter. And it's like, that's totally unrealistic.
You're going to get yourself doxxed, so I would stop. I would just let time tick and the calendar turn, and no one has to worry about this anymore.
No doubt. No doubt. Hopefully that saga goes to a new season soon with all new cast. I appreciate you. I don't have any other questions for you. I just think the world of what you're doing, and I love that. I mean, first off, anytime veterans want to get into the arts, it's guys like you that have made it, or Michael Broderick, who's done it.
Did he shout out VME? Did he give VME a big shout out? Because I wish, when I came to town in 2004, I wish VME existed. I wish there was an infrastructure of veterans that could give a sort of 101 course to the industry. A nice steady network of other human beings who are trying to do the same thing, who get you, you get them. The people at VME are great. I can't say enough about all of them, Michael included, Karen Kraft, Kyle and Mike, who started it way back when. All good dudes, all doing great things for vets. And I would, VME, Veterans in Media Entertainment, if you're interested. And they're great.
Here's my big pitch idea. You ready? We should make a movie, take all of the military people that we can find, Larry Wilcox, Marine, anybody like that, Nate Boyer, and let's do Battalion Hollywood, Secret Mission. We're going to film a movie, over in Pakistan or something, and but it's going to be all veteran storytellers, veteran actors, veteran everything. I think it would be a great movie, like 30 Dozen, but done in the modern times.
I'm all about it, man. You write up a treatment, we'll check it out, and then we'll start shopping it.
I love it. Anything in closing at all, Tom?
No, TJ, again, I'm glad we were able to do this, and it's nice to connect with you, if not face-to-face, at least in the virtual world here.
Yeah, totally. And I want to let both of you guys know, I'd love to do this for you anytime. If you have a panel of people, if people have questions, Q&A, whatever, happy to do it again. You guys are putting out a great product here, and I'm proud to be associated with it. And yeah, man, I hope I'm still working and established enough that you would want me back on.